Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. For today's tutorial, we're making sweats. Cozy, casual, and flattering is how I describe these bottoms that are a breeze to make and are sure to get you a compliment or two. Speaking of, if you're looking for your next compliment-worthy project, you are in the right place. We have hundreds of crochet tutorials and patterns with more dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 545 grams of yarn. That's 975 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 6mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCD-DIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you keep track of the amount of stitches you do per project. I always think about it, but I end up forgetting because we're always on to the next one. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 2 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, and single crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and I'll explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting these pants started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 6mm hook and start off by making a chain the height that we'd like for our waistband to be. Now I'd like for mine to be just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 8. Now that we have our chain, we're going to do our first row, which is a slip stitch row. So block off that last chain and do a chain 1. That chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch. So simply insert, yarn over, and gently pull through everything on our hook. We want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly, otherwise the following row will be a little bit too tight to work into. Again, into that following chain, insert, yarn over, and pull through everything. And that's it. Continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, and then I'll meet you back. Our row 1 is completed. I did do a chain up of 1, and I flipped my work. Now from here, we're just going to do back loop slip stitch rows. So finding that first stitch from our previous row, we're going to insert into that back loop, then yarn over, and again, pull through both loops on our hook. Let's do that once more. Into that next available stitch, we're going to insert into that back loop with the loop that's furthest away from us, yarn over, and pull through everything, and that's it. From here, all we're going to do is continue to repeat this row with no increases and no decreases, so just 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, until we have a waistband that can stretch around the widest part of our hips, and we must end on an even number in multiples of 4, and then I'll meet you back. So we are back. I have just completed the width of my waistband. I have a total of 100 rows, and that's roughly 19.5 inches or 49 centimeters unstretched. Now what we're going to do from here is a single crochet row along the bottom. So from where we're at, we're going to chain 1 and flip. So now that we have done our chain 1, what we're going to do is put 1 single crochet into every side row. So getting that started, we're going to find our first side row, and this is my top loop right over here. I'm going to insert my hook into that top loop with a single crochet. There's 1. This is my next side row. I'm going to find that top loop and insert into there with a single crochet. Let's do this just once more. This divot is my following side row. Find that top loop and insert. This raised row is my following side row. Insert into that top loop with 1, and that's it. We're going to continue with 1 single crochet into every side row, so we should all end up with the same amount of stitches as rows that we made. Once we don't have any more side rows left to work into, I will meet you back. So our single crochet row is complete. It is going to make our work curve like this, but that's completely fine. It'll all even out once when it's worn. And just as a really quick tip, once when the single crochet row is completed, try your piece on. So just wrap it around your hips, making sure that it's not too tight. This single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So if you try it on and it's a little bit too tight, redo some stitches with a looser grip. Or if it's too loose, redo some stitches with a tighter grip. But what we're going to do from here is just do our seam together. So all we're going to do is just fold our work in half, making sure that nothing is twisted. And then we're going to make sure that our single crochet rows, the front of the single crochet row, is faced along the outside. Then we're going to be inserting our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then what we're going to do is yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. And we're going to do one single crochet, just working in through that side row within the front and the back panel. So just finding that side stitch and insert, same side loop within the back panel and single crochet. Then we're going to be doing outside loop slip stitch seam. So finding that first stitch from the front panel, we're going to insert only into that front loop. Finding that next stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. Again, into that next stitch into the front panel, insert into that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert into that back loop, and pull through everything. And we're going to continue this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you back. We are back. Our single crochet row is complete, and right before we get started on the length of our pants, what we're going to want to do is separate the left and right panel. So all we're going to do is start by inserting our first 2 stitch markers into the 2 stitches that we have that's nearest to our back seam that we just did. Then all we're going to do is just take the amount of single crochets that we made when we single crocheted along the bottom of our piece, is just take that number and cut that in half. So since I made a total of 100 single crochets, I inserted my stitch markers into the 50th and 51st. Those are my 2 middle stitches. We should have 2 middle stitches for every size, no matter what size we're making, because we all should have ended on an even number. And just as a last minute tip, don't mind these side stitch markers that I have. Those are there just for me so I can keep track of the amount of stitches I have. Once when everything is all divvied up, we can now get started on the length of our pants. So what we're going to do is make sure that our work is still flipped right side out, right side up, so the single crochet row, the front of it, is along the outside. Then we're all going to insert our hook into one of our stitch markers, it doesn't quite matter which one, that is nearest to our seam. And we're all going to make an even number chain the length that we'd like for our pants to be. So you can make this cropped or full length. I like for mine to be full length, so I'm going to start by making a chain of 116. That's roughly 30 inches or 76 centimeters for me. So now that we have our chain, we're all going to do our first row, which is going to be a single crochet row. So whenever we're along the outer edge and we're starting off a single crochet row, we're going to chain 1. That chain 1 will not count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then from here, we're just going to single crochet into that chain that we blocked off, the second chain from our hook. So bring our hook down into that chain with a single crochet. And from here, continue with 1 single crochet into every chain until we reach the base. So we are back, and I made my way all the way down with my single crochet row. And yes, I did do a small sample size just to show you guys. Now, just to connect it into the base, all we're going to do is slip stitch it into that following stitch into the base. So insert, pull through everything. And now our row 1 is connected, and that slip stitch into the base doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then from here, our following 2 rows are going to be moss stitch rows. So into that following stitch into the base, we're going to slip stitch into there as well, just to work our way up to the following row. Still doesn't count as a stitch. We're going to chain 1 and flip our work. Then all we're going to do is skip that first stitch from our previous row, making sure we're not counting those slip stitches into the base. So we're going to skip 1 into the next, insert with a single, and that should form our first stitch for this row, and our second. That first is that chain space, second is that single crochet. Then from here, chain 1, skip a stitch into the next, single crochet, and we're just going to continue to chain 1, skip a stitch, and into the next single crochet until we reach the end of the row. We have made our way all the way down with our row 2. Now from here, our third row in our 3-row repeat is going to be another moss stitch row. So whenever we're along the outer edge and we're getting started on our following moss stitch row, we're always going to chain 2. That first chain is going to count as our turning chain. That second chain is going to count as a chain, then we're going to flip our work. Then what we're going to do is skip that first stitch from our previous row, which should be the single crochet, then single crochet into the next stitch, which should be our chain space for everyone. So insert with a single crochet. Now so far this should give us our first 2 stitches for this row. That first stitch is our chain space. That may be a little bit collapsed like how mine is right here, but it is going to be there. And that following single crochet is our second stitch. From here, continue to chain 1, skip a stitch, and single crochet until we reach the end of the row. So we've made our way down with our third row. Now just as a really quick tip, for every row we should all have the same amount of stitches as chains that we made since we are doing any increases or decreases. But once we made sure of that, we're just going to slip stitch it into the base. So into that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch. That slip stitch does not count as a stitch. Then into that next available stitch, slip stitch into there. That doesn't count as a stitch. And we're going to flip our work. But just as a really quick tip, this is going to be a 3-row repeat. So as you guys can tell, sometimes our single crochet rows will end along the edge, like how this first row was. Or sometimes our single crochet rows can start along the base, like how our row 4 is about to. But it is going to be basically the same idea. Just put 1 single crochet into every stitch. Then at the end of that row, since we're starting our falling moss stitch row at the edge, chain 2, flip our work, skip that first stitch, single crochet into the next, all the way down. Then the row right after that is going to be a moss stitch row. So connect it into the base the same way that we just did. And whenever we're getting started on a moss stitch row that starts along the base, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, and then put 1 single crochet into that following stitch, which should be our chain space. We're just going to continue to repeat those rows until we reach our first stitch marker stitch, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I'll meet you back. We are back. We have just completed 1 entire pant leg. Now what we're all going to do from here is the inner thigh portion. So what we're all going to do is try on our piece. Then we're going to make sure that our waistband is where we want it to sit when this piece is completed, so high-waisted or low-rise, completely up to you. Then we're going to work on our inner thigh, so start by inserting your stitch marker into the stitch where we want the inner thigh to stop. So this stitch marker is basically going to be where everything connects within the front and the back panel. Now it does need to be in an even number of stitches. So I'm going to insert my stitch marker into the 30th stitch from the top, and that's roughly 8.5 inches or 23 centimeters. So just to get started on this first row together, we're all going to start by inserting our hook into the bottom corner stitch of the row that we just ended. Then, if we didn't have to do a chain up of 1 and cut, we're going to pull through. Then we're all going to do a chain 2. We're going to skip that first stitch and into the next stitch, insert with a single crochet because everyone's next row should be a moss stitch row. That gives us our first stitch and our second stitch for this row. And per usual, chain 1, skip a stitch into the next with a single crochet. And that's it. We're all going to continue on with our moss stitch until we're worked into the stitch that's right before our stitch marker stitch. Then chain 2, flip our work to our second moss stitch row, then a single crochet row after that. For this inner thigh connector, we aren't going to have any increases or decreases, so we're just going to continue on with this 3-row repeat until we have a portion that can reach from one pant leg across your inner thigh to your other pant leg. Then I'll meet you back right after our second moss stitch row that ends along the bottom, and then I'll meet you back so we can seam it all up together. We are back. I have just completed my inner thigh connector. Now just for this inner thigh connector portion, I have a total of 32 rows. This width is roughly 8 inches or 20 centimeters, or the total width for one pant leg that I have is roughly 20 inches or 50 centimeters. Now what we're all going to do from here is just seam it up together. So first things first, we're all going to want to make sure that our work is flipped wrong side out. So wrong side out is that single crochet row that we did right after our waistband, making sure that the right side of the single crochet row is flipped along the inside so that all of our seams are along the inside once one flips right side out. Now that our work is flipped wrong side out, we're going to be inserting our hook into the bottom corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then we're going to pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now from here, we're just going to be doing a single crochet seam. So all together, we're just going to find that first stitch into the front panel, insert, first stitch into the back panel, insert, and single crochet. Let's do that again. First stitch into the front panel, first stitch into the back, and single. And that's it. We're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way up. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, or once we reach our stitch marker, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then we're going to repeat everything we did here on the other side. We are back. We have just completed both of our pant legs, including the inner thigh connectors, seamed everything up, and now we're going to seam the entirety of the pants together. So what we're going to do is we're first going to make sure that our work is still flipped wrong side out. Then we're going to be inserting our hook into the stitches that we have that's worked into the waistband. So our stitch markers should be into those 2 stitches in between our pant legs, or it's just the last stitches that our pant legs are coming out of. Then we're going to do a single crochet seam all the way down until we don't have any more stitches left, and then we're going to be working into our inner thigh connectors, and then I'll meet you guys back. So we're back. We made our way down with our single crochet seam. Now we have reached our first side row within the inner thigh connector, so we're going to do those first few together. So making sure that our work is still flipped wrong side out, all we're going to do is put one single crochet into the first side row within the front panel, along with the first side row within the back panel at the same time, and then single crochet around everything. It's going to be kind of hard to see, but we'll do our best. So it helps better if you kind of purse the two pieces together, but I'm just going to show you guys this way because it could be a little bit easier to see. I'm going to find my first side row, and this is mine right here. I'm going to insert into that top loop within the front panel, find our first side row within the back panel, this is mine right here, find that top loop, insert your hook, and single crochet around everything. And that's it. We're going to continue doing that, making our way all the way across. When we don't have any more side rows left to work into, continue on with our single crochet seam, working our way all the way back up towards the waistband. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, do a chain up of one and cut. So we are back. Once when everything is all seamed up, the last thing you're going to have to do is our cuffs. So making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up, we're going to be inserting our hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom of our pants. Then we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook, and we're just going to do a single crochet row where it's a single crochet and then a decrease, single crochet, decrease, making our way all the way around. So to do this together, we're going to pull our yarn through and do a chain up of one to secure. Start by finding our first side row. This is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with a single crochet. This is my following top loop and this is my following top loop. So here's one, here's two. I'm going to insert my hook into that first, pull through, into that top loop of that following side row, insert, pull through all three. And that's it. Let's do this once more. This is my first side row. I'm going to find that top loop, insert with one single. These are my following two side rows, so find the first top loop, pull through, next top loop, pull through all three. We're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way around, and slip stitch into that chain space so we don't have any more side rows left to work into. Now, as a really quick tip, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So go ahead and try it on, making sure that everything is fitting nicely. If it's a little bit too tight, reduce some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, reduce some stitches with a tighter grip. We've made our way around. Our single crochet row is complete. We are then going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our cuff to be. I'd like for mine to be roughly 4 inches or 10 centimeters, so I went ahead and made a chain 20. Now we're going to be doing slip stitch rows. Now since we already know how to do slip stitches, just do the first one, block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch, making sure that we're not tugging too tightly, and continue with one slip stitch into every chain until we reach the base. We have made our way all the way down with our first row. Now we're just going to connect it into the base, but connecting it into the base is actually going to be done exactly the same way that we did the body portion into the waistband. So just as a refresher, find that following stitch in the base. Insert with a slip stitch. That slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following available stitch into the base. Still doesn't count as a stitch. Flip our work and then put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Now from here, since we already know how to do this part, continue on with our back loop slip stitch rows with no increases and no decreases until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. Then I'll meet you back so we can seam everything together. We have just made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. Now we don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to do our seam, but this seam is going to be done exactly the same way as the waistband, so an outside loop slip stitch seam. So just to talk you guys through it, we're all going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Do our outside loop slip stitch seam until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of one and cut, and then repeat on the other side. So now that our cuffs are completed, the last thing we're going to do is our drawstring. So that's going to be fairly simple. We're all going to start by making a chain that is long enough to fit around the widest part of our hips, plus an additional, I would say anywhere from 7 to 10 inches, because we do need some extra length for the tie. So I made a chain of 150. Then all we're going to do is insert our tapestry needle or hook, whatever you guys want to use, into our waistband where we want our drawstring to be. So if you guys want it high, in the middle, or low, I'm going to find where mine is. I would like for mine to be in the middle, so all I'm going to do is chase that middle seam that we did all the way up to find that middle row, then just find that middle stitch, and then just continue to insert your hook in through that middle stitch, making your way all the way around, while making sure we pull the chain through with it. I'll meet you back once we made our way all the way around. So we are back. We have woven our drawstring in through the entirety of the waistband, and we are all done. Last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it. Hope y'all enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye.